All right. So I think we've discussed season 5 pretty well up until this point. I'm sure there are a couple of key moments we've left on the cutting room floor, but I wanted to take us to the end of the season and talk a little bit about how we felt about how different characters' arcs came to a close. And it's mostly narrated by Bronte, right?
I gotta say, Joe's dick getting shot off was like peak television for me. That was very well done. I appreciated that ending. That tickled me for sure.
Did you get the vibes of total psychotic break though at the end of that episode where, you know, I mean, he's literally running around in his underwear, like no concept of what's going on around him, really, like totally primal in a way.
Yeah, I mean, he's triggered, right? Because like Bronte, again, like Bronte's his mom. She rejected the thing.
And he even says, like, kill me, I don't want to be put in a cage. And we know that a lot of his childhood trauma comes from being put in the cage by the original owner of Mooney's bookstore. So,
yeah.
What do you make of that final scene with him in the jail cell?
Yeah, one thing I was going to say, though, really quickly, though, is that, you know, throughout watching Joe through all these seasons, it never really presented itself as like horror thriller until that final scene with Bronte, like where he's chasing her,
where
like
the lights are going in and out.
Yeah, just that whole scene, and I just find that to be fascinating because I mean it speaks to the writing that is done on this show. Like, despite whatever situation Joe has been in up until this point, it never felt like it was like a horror film, what he was doing. But like this particular moment, and maybe because he's become a little bit more of the hunted in this case, that's why I don't, and maybe it's because I'm viewing it through a different lens or perspective. I don't know. Like it just came to mind when you were talking about it, Laura.
No, I think you're totally right. I felt the same way watching that episode. It felt like a thriller, honestly. Like if I wanted to put on like a scary movie. Yeah, honestly, it gave those vibes, definitely the swinging light vibes to Pam's point. Gave that. I bet we could probably make a lot of different film comparisons to like different horror movies and how they've done that. Yeah. I was also just because
struggling with the phone too. Is a big
watching
one.
That was just like, girl.
Wipe the blood off your fingers.
I know. Please. I'm like, come on. We know how this works.
Take a breath.
It was also I don't know why I got this, but like I got like Camp Crystal Lake vibes from just like the whole setting of where they were. Like that lake, I did not. I felt I had like feelings about like what is in that lake. Fortunately, nothing was in it, but it was just creepy.
Yeah. But to answer your question about the final scene, what's interesting is that Joe is reading a book called The Executioner's Song, and it's a true crime novel. It's the story of Gary Gilmore, who was the first person executed in the U.S. after the reinstatement of the death penalty. So, and much of the book is about how Gary kind of gives in to this fact that he's going to be executed versus fighting it. So I thought like that was very appropriate for Joe's situation. Now, whether or not Joe is going to fight it or not is who knows. But I don't know. Like I felt like it was very final for Joe to be there. Like when we talked about like our predictions for this season, I honestly thought Joe would find a way to get away. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon.
Even with the crazy fan mail he's getting, it felt final to you. Because to me, that's kind of what made it open-ended in a weird sort of way. Is that he like that he's behind bars, but there are still people out there for him to manipulate. Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, honestly, think about like Ted Bundy.
Right.
Like that's a real life example. Well, it's crazy.
Yeah, and like look at those like a few years ago when like a few of those like adaptations of his story were coming out and people were like, Ted Bundy's kind of hot though. It's like, yeah, that's why there were people that got murdered. Okay. Like you're feeding into the insanity.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not saying that like one crazy like fanatic is going to break Joe Goldberg out of jail, but I do think that like I think that it was in character for him to continue justifying his actions despite the fact that he's behind bars. And I do think that he made a really interesting commentary on society, which is that like despite everything that like they've thrown at, like they basically threw the book at him, and there's still people out there that are like enabling his behavior.
Totally.
And it's so Joe to also make it someone else's fault.
Right.
Like, oh, this is on you. Maybe you guys like, shouldn't be so obsessed with me.
Yeah. Exactly.
But does
and like granted, he's not wrong. Does he
have a point? That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Doesn't he have a point here that, you know, he's almost like he's a reflection of, I don't want to say society, but like he's making a commentary on certain aspects of society by saying, you know, like, look, despite all of what I have done, here you still are clamoring for more, right? And I think you see that too in the social media piece that we were talking about earlier, right? The thirsting, the comments, the things that are being said about it. Doesn't make it right, but I'm just saying that there's something to that.
And a great full circle moment for what we saw in happening in real time after the show hit Netflix, where people were actively thirsting after Joe Goldberg and being like, yeah, I want a man that would kill for me, to the point where Penn Badgley has had to multiple times speak out against the fact that like nobody should want a man like Joe.
Yeah, I could almost feel his eyes like boring into the viewer's soul in that final shot, being like, I'm serious.
Right.
Stop it. Because ever since season 1, he's been like, what is wrong with you people?
Right. And because it wasn't like, oh, Penn Badgley is so hot, which like Penn Badgley is a very attractive man, right? But it was literally like, oh no, but I want Joe Goldberg, and there's like a huge distinction there. And so it was really, really odd to see, you know, I mean, like on one hand, are you surprised? No, because it's the internet. On the other hand, it's like some people are acting too much a fool over here. So
Joe Goldberg is definitely on Conjugal Harmony.
Oh, yeah. I think you're so right. Yeah.
I'm sure somebody's pretending to be Joe Goldberg.
And I mean, who knows if he has internet privileges? Because I know sometimes, depending on the circumstances, I don't know how it works, but sometimes certain prisoners do get that. Like, if they wanted to continue this series, I think there's a thread they could pull with that. Like, how is Joe like still seemingly rising in profile despite the fact that he's in prison, and like what does that mean for his life in prison? Because I'm sure it's not something that necessarily like makes his fellow prisoners warm up to him. In fact, like I'm sure they get the creeps off of him like a lot of the men in this show do.
Yeah. I assume that they probably leave him to his own devices, but he probably gets some perks, to your point, because he's on good behavior and all he does is like read his books. So
yeah, I mean there's certainly the opportunity to almost create disciples of Joe, as you're saying, if he has access to the internet, and or those who become enamored with his story, that would be the most likely way I could see this continuing, because it has to, I don't know, it's not really like you can follow another character from this series unless maybe Henry evolves into another form of Joe later on in life. So it's almost like you have to be consistent with the type of personality that Joe is. And so the only way I see that manifesting is by him having those that are quote unquote fans of his that would continue to do similar things that he did, and maybe even at his direction. I don't know. Like, I don't feel like somebody like Kate is totally safe either. Like, there's still the opportunity to blackmail her in the future, because she's got a lot of skeletons in her closet that Joe is well aware of. Like, is that a leverage point for him to get out of jail at some point?
Well, and to your point, when after he does that interview with the TikTok newsfluencer, whatever they call her, right? We all of a sudden see those like red pill, like far right crazy talking heads talking about like, look at how dangerous women are. Like, you know, we see the tide turn against Bronte, so it would make perfect sense for the tide to turn against Kate. But she also has the added factor of being extremely wealthy, so she can probably protect herself and also Henry against that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other characters that we want to talk about in terms of how their story wrapped up in season 5?
I think I'll just reiterate what I said at the top of the show, which is that I thought the way, like, characters, both living and dead, the way that things wrapped, I thought it was nice. And I appreciate the message that was being sent about, like, Joe doesn't get to have the last word. These women get their voices back. I'm very much on board with it. It did kind of feel a little too clean and like easy. We know that these things really aren't easy, and stuff doesn't just fall into place the way it should in these circumstances. You know, wish we would. We wish that it would. So it kind of felt to me like they were maybe running out of screen time and they had to just like resolve any of the outstanding like secondary characters plot lines in a way that felt satisfying. Like it might have been nice to get another episode that really dug into these women and like their legacies and what it looked like for them to recover and rebound.
Yeah, and to that point, they try and give us like little flashes, like, you know, Nadia, who was framed for the last big crime that Joe committed in the UK, is like she's using her freedom to go back and give back to women that are behind bars, and you know, Kate is fulfilled by his their son, and so on and so forth, and for Bronte, it's like the fact that she was able to get Beck's original manuscript printed. So
yeah, it was just a lot to cram in.
I agree.
I think
agree.
Like just a few minutes of screen time. It's like,
it's one of those like
there were puppies and rainbows and everything was great again at the end.
It's like when you go see a biopic and then it's like the where are they now, and it's just like a still frame and like so and so went off to college.
Yeah. I agree, and it's interesting because you had 10 episodes. It feels like you could have spent a little bit more time on that point that you were both raising.
Yeah, it's true. At the same time, though, I did really enjoy the season, and I don't think that any of like the primary story arc was wasted. I thought they did a really nice job with it overall. So my critique on the ending, you know, I think endings in anything, especially if you're thinking about like thriller, if we're thinking about that as being a theme, particularly in the final episode of the season, or of the series. Those are difficult landings to stick, so I empathize with that. But still, overall, really enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up our conversation on season 5 of You. Unless you all have any parting thoughts, this is it for a while, right? Until they decide to do season 6 or a movie spinoff.
Yeah,
I guess so.
Yeah, they could. They'll cover what happened. They'll cover what happens to the remains of Joe's blown off penis.
It was a wild ride.
They could do an origin story on Joe.
I feel like that would be too dark.
You know, I will say this because I have another show that's about a serial killer that I loved, Dexter.
Mm-hmm.
And Dexter, first of all, jumped the shark at like season 5, which was disappointing. But then they've gone on to try and do 2 Dexter spinoffs, and they both sucked. And I was just like, leave it alone. Like, if there's no more story to tell, then just don't. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to resurrect this. It's not going to work if you don't have a good story to tell. And that's how I feel about You as well. Like, I don't want a 6th season if there isn't actually a narrative there. Like, I don't want it to just be like, and the adventures of Joe, because we want to make money, you know?
Yeah, that's totally fair. So I will say, though, it was nice. I wonder if the diner by my house is going to get more business now that it made the appearance in...
Right.
Oh, yeah. Was it the diner that he goes to, like, look for Bronte?
Yeah,
is that the diner? Oh,
yep.
Okay.
They say that it's that she's in Atlantic Beach, but the diner is actually in Long Beach. It's not in Atlantic Beach. Well,
maybe you'll have to take a little field trip over there for us.
Do you want me to? I can go tomorrow and just take some photos.
Yeah.
Do it.
That'd be fun.
So, yeah. So that was fun to see, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned too that I think they filmed the beach scenes down here too. That beach house. I don't think like that house is an actual place that people go to. I just think that was actually somebody's house that they filmed at, but poor Clayton.
I know.
Yeah, that was rough.
He got
I was like, ooh, right on the hearth. Just
he got too into his character, you know?
He got like reverse American History X'd, if you've seen it.
Right? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's true.
Anyway, on that note, it's an appropriate note when discussing this series. Thanks everybody for listening. We're still relatively new, so we need your support. So we would really appreciate if you follow us in your favorite podcast app and leave a review. This is going to help the show continue to be a success, and we thank you for doing that. Second, please follow us on social media. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram as What the Hype Podcast. Our website is whatthehypepodcast.com, and on X, we're at What the Hype Show, if you still use X anymore. If you want to email us about anything, you can do so at whatthehypepodcast@gmail.com. And then finally, does a friend or family member need an introduction to you, or do they maybe just want to learn more? You can share this episode with a friend. Tell them we're walking through every aspect of pop culture each and every week. And Laura, you and Eric are somehow, some way, making your way through season 2 of The Last of Us after a devastating episode 2.
Yeah, I know. And you're welcome to come on and join us at any time, Micah, because I think we need group therapy after that. But yeah, myself, Eric, and our friend Chelsea are covering HBO's The Last of Us season 2. Right now, we are actually doing those reactions live. So on Sundays at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, right after the episode, we are hopping on to give our initial reactions and have some fun discussion about the episode. So if you need friends to talk about The Last of Us right after the episode ends and you don't have anyone nearby that you can gab on about it with, come join us. We have a lot of fun and we would love to see y'all in the chat. And also, actually, Pam stood in for me on the most recent Last of Us reaction video. So you'll get to see her too. And Micah will be joining us for one of them coming up soon. So
yeah. And then coming up next week, believe it's time to celebrate 20 years of the Gilmore Girls. Is that right?
25.
25. I'm sorry.
I know. It's okay. You could de-age us 5 years. That's fine with me. Yeah, we'll have a fun episode celebrating 25 years of Gilmore Girls just in time for Mother's Day as well, since it's like the ultimate show about mothers and daughters as far as millennials are concerned. So you can join myself, Laura, and Eric for that episode.
Awesome. Well, thanks again to both of you, and thanks to everybody for listening. And that is the hype on you. I try to do my best Joe Goldberg impression.
Oh, I don't listen. Not
that I want to be known for that.
No, probably not. But yeah, he really nails it. I don't think I could cover that. You. Say it like
it's
5
the pause.
times.
He's like, hello.
It is.
You.
Hello.
Or we could just be like, goodbye, you.
Or if you're Southern like me, goodbye, y'all.
But y'all just, it doesn't make you feel special because it's not singular.
Yeah, and also it's not threatening, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, all right. We will see y'all next time to talk some Gilmore Girls. Bye-bye.